Well, are you, buying or selling?
Selling?
Horses.
Oh, no, I'm not interested in horses.
Oh. You came to the wrong place, didn't you? By the way, you didn't say what part of the state you come from, Miss,
No, I didn't.
Chris Scalzo here with
Matt Howell.
And on this episode of the First Round, Matt and I are going to ring in the new year with some Soul and some Clooney. First up, it's going to be Pixar's latest film, Soul, which is available, Matt, right now on Disney Plus without an additional fee. Then we're going to shove off to the Arctic and spend some time with Clooney. Clooney, Cloons, George, as he is the last survivor potentially on Earth, as there is a spaceship coming here, right? He's going to warn him, don't come, because things have gone horribly, horribly wrong. We're going to tell you what's coming up on your physical media this upcoming Tuesday. Maybe what you should be streaming and picking up in your straight-to-DVD options as well. This is really tortured. And then finally, we're going to close things out as we share our 5 favorite films directed by an actor. But let's start everything off with a clip from Soul.
Hang on. What are y'all laughing at? So Connie got a little lost in it. That's a good thing. Look, I remember one time my dad took me to this jazz club, and that's the last place I wanted to be. But then I see this guy, and he's playing these chords with force on it. And then with a minor, I was, whoa, whoa, whoa. Then he has the inner voices, and it's like he's singing. And I swear the next thing I know, it's like he floats off the stage. That guy was lost in the music. He was in it, and he took the rest of us with him. That's when I knew I was born to play.
Matt, why don't you tell the fine folks at home, what is Soul all about?
So Soul follows the journey of Joe, a band teacher in a local high school or maybe junior high, and a struggling jazz musician who's been just on the cusp of making it. And a former student comes and offers him to fill in and play piano for a famous jazz musician who's playing in town. Joe goes, he plays, gets the gig, and he's so excited on the way back. He's not watching where he's going, and he falls down a manhole and dies. The rest of the film is him in the afterlife and trying to get back to Earth with the assistance of an unborn soul named 22 to try and get back and play, his life's purpose with the jazz gig.
So, Matt, Pixar has routinely just kicked out all of these really fantastic films. For me, I think WALL-E's still at the top of the heap. What about you?
Yeah, I would say WALL-E is probably my favorite still.
So how does Soul compare to their output? I know they do the franchisey stuff, right, with Cars, because you got to pay the bills, right? Because you're going to tackle something like Soul, which cost $150 million to make.
Wow.
Plus, how does this measure up to the rest of their output? And given the themes and some of the groundbreaking, not just technology, but just characters and ideas they present in this film, how does Soul shake out for you?
Soul is a highlight of their later output. I really enjoyed Onward from last year. I think a lot more than you did, and a lot more than a lot of people did. But I enjoyed Onward. But this is, while I don't necessarily think I don't think it's going to supplant WALL-E for me. I would say it's definitely top 5. It's very interesting in its themes, which are challenging, and its ideas, which are kind of far-reaching, and just kind of its execution between the voice acting and the animation. It never ceases to impress me when Pixar is willing to take risks as far as what is appropriate for a children's film. And I think they really push it with this one and succeed really well. I mean, much more than I think their other more esoteric offerings in Coco and Inside Out, which makes an interesting set of trilogy for these kind of pushing it films. What did you think?
I think Inside Out is really great, and as well, another Peter Docter directed film, or Pete Docter film, right? He also did Up, and he did, as we said, he did Inside Out. What else has he done for us? Is that it? Is that the Monsters Inc.? I guess that was his first film directed through Pixar. And I love Coco as well. Out of all the films that I've watched that are Pixar films, as we said, Wall-E, but Coco, the ending of Coco wrecked me more than I think any of the other films. Obviously, in the opening of Up, right, which is possibly the sweetest, saddest thing ever animated in a film. But, and I will confess, I don't know if Up is as good as the opening 15, 20 minutes of that film is. It's still good, but it's not, there's, I think, a bit of a down line.
And I would argue that Coco maybe not as good as the last 15 minutes of that film is. It's good, but what's preceding it is not nowhere near the emotional levels of what you get at the end.
That's fair. I think that's accurate. So, no, but I agree with you. I think Soul... There's some truly genius work here at Matt. Though I think one of the things that's interesting is that it's kind of Get Out via Disney. The Disney-fied version of Get Out. There's no horror aspects of it. But we do have 22 is played by Tina Fey, if you're not aware. And Jamie Foxx, of course, is our Joe. But so we do have the white woman inhabiting the black man's body a couple times throughout this film. But that's neither here nor there. It's obviously played more for gags and laughs. So I think, though, that the fusion, Matt, of this film, of music and the visuals, it's just some stunning stuff here. It's a deeply rich and textured film. There's a lot of nods to different forms of art, really. The design of the Jerrys and the Terry, right? I'm not sure. Are they angels? I'm not quite sure. They don't really quantify what they are. Which I understand, because it's tough, because you want to make a film that's dealing with this type of subject matter as widely accessible as possible, right? So you're going to lean and pull on different philosophies and different religions, I guess, but you don't want to focus in on just one. So they have these kind of abstract, and that's truly what they are. They look like abstract works of art, these Terrys and Jerrys, which it was killing me, and I couldn't remember, even though I went to art school. It's a design of a bird that's kind of like an impressionistic abstract painting. Because I recreated it in one of my classes, and I spent like a half an hour the other day trying to find it. And I know it's not data. I know it's just driving me nuts, man. I'm still upset about it. But it's very similar to how those characters are designed. But not only do we tackle kind of purpose, soul, determinism, the importance of teachers, right? I mean, there is just so much that they cram into this film, but it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel overstuffed. Everything feels very natural. It's very sweet and endearing, and it really brings these heady subjects down to a level that are, I think, really understandable by people of all ages. This is impressive work.
Yeah, I agree. This thing moves in kind of certain aspects of it. Like the first third of it is this kind of out there, challenging, interesting philosophical take that's all full of surreal, touches and wonder. And then the middle third of it is your kind of zany cartoon body mix up, where all the jokes kind of land. And then the last third of it is like your Pixar emotional gut punch, right? And all of those, as disparate points as those are and as different as those feel, they all kind of flow together. And it's like you're on a Disney ride that kind of you go through these different emotions and points of it. And I think everything that they're managed to pull off on this is really top notch. I mean, the emotional beats don't seem treacly at all. They don't seem dumbed down, but they don't seem saccharine. The philosophy of it is an interesting way to kind of approach it. It's not pinpointed on any particular religion. There's no heaven or hell. It's just that you exist on to something else, and they never really explain what that is. Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack here, and I think it rewards repeat viewing. I could definitely see myself sitting down and watching this again in the near future, just to kind of unpack as much of it as I can.
And I want to really drive this home, too. I know I mentioned it, but as I said, the fusion of the music and the visuals is very important to this film. Not because of Joe as a struggling musician, right? But also just as it's kind of almost like a guidepost throughout the entire film. It kind of helps bring us along. And there's some really, truly incredible stuff here by Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor, who do the major lifts of the musical score and some of the stuff you hear. And then they brought in John Batiste as well to kind of handle more of the jazz stuff. And from what I understand, Joe is basically modeled after Batiste, particularly like the scene in the beginning when he's at the piano. There is one of the special features you can actually watch on Disney Plus is they do kind of a side-by-side as he's playing a song, and they basically modeled him after him in that capacity. The way the music permeates the film throughout, it is so integral to your experience, much more so than it is as kind of just underlying background music to help manage your moods as you're watching the film. There's a deeper level to that, much I think like the whole film visually itself is as well, and the themes it tackles. I am continually impressed with what this studio is able to do by tackling these deeply complex philosophical issues and just distilling them in a way that is just, I know I'm repeating myself now. It's just really, this is top shelf work from Pixar, probably easily in my top 5, maybe even my top 3. I don't know, I got to think about it. But just really incredible stuff. And Jamie Foxx, too. I want to say this may be his career best performance. I know he won the Academy Award in Ray, and I know voice acting in animated films is kind of, looked down upon more or less. It's not considered a full-bodied, visual performance. But he really brings a pathos and a sweetness to his character, a vulnerability that I don't know if I've seen in him before. Now, granted, I know a lot of his later work has been more action-oriented. So, but still, really, top marks for Soul, Matt. I ended up giving it an A.
Yeah, I gave it an A as well. I think it's starting off 2021 strong, even though it's a 2020 film. Yeah, so I think it's on the short list for some of the better films I've seen for 2020, for sure.
Absolutely. And it will be nominated for an animated film with the Oscars easily. I hesitate to say possibly even Best Picture, depending on how many it goes. How many they do this, they can go up to 10, right? So we'll see how that shakes out.
Mm-hmm.
Soul is currently available on Disney Plus right now, the streaming service. If you've had a chance to see it, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. And remember, again, no upcharge on Soul like there was with Mulan. So if you have Disney Plus, you can watch it. Moving on, Matt, let's spend a few minutes and talk about what's coming up on physical media this upcoming Tuesday, January 12th.
Yes.
No, please don't let me disturb you. I am very content to watch you work.
Shop's closed, sir.
God, it's wonderful, isn't it? Cornu ammonis?
Ammonite. That's a broken one.
Well, it's still a fine specimen.
Is there something you wanted, sir?
Sorry, please, let me introduce myself, Miss Anning. Roderick Murchison. I must confess I'm a little in awe. Now, your reputation is something I've often heard discussed in the Geographical Society in London.
All boys together.
Yes, well, quite. But your insights, your skills are legendary. And I thought for my archaeological tour of the continent, how could I miss the opportunity to meet you? And here you are, at your work.
I was under the impression that fine London gentlemen were no longer interested in my sea creature relics. Fashion moved on. Did it not?
That's Ammonite, the romantic drama period film featuring Kate Winslet and Saoirse Ronan. That's getting a lot of Oscar buzz at the moment. You can pick that up. It's basically Winslet plays a self-taught paleontologist who works alone. She comes in and meets this gentleman who wants to kind of work beside her, but then falls in love with his wife. Also coming out is Skylines, starring first-run favorite Rona Mitra. Well, I should say specifically, I know I'm a big fan of the Neil Marshall movie Doomsday. Even though I still have issues with it when they get to the Irish countryside. It's not as much fun as it is in post-apocalyptic UK there in England. This is, I think, the third in the series of Skyline movies. Have you ever seen any of those?
Didn't we watch one?
I don't know if we ever did.
Okay. I don't know.
Still rolling. When a virus threatens to turn the now Earth-dwelling friendly alien hybrids against humans, Captain Rose Corley must lead a team of elite mercenaries on a mission to the alien world in order to save what's left of humanity. Those are your big new stuff. New to Blu-ray, Minding the Gap from Criterion. 3 young men bond together to escape volatile families in the Rust Belt hometown. As they face adult responsibilities, unexpected revelations threaten their decade-long friendship. Brand new high-definition master approved by the director Bing Lau. New audio commentaries, new follow-up conversations, new programs featuring interviews with professional skateboarder Tony Hawk with Lau, 4 outtake scenes, and a short film from the director from 2010 called Nuak. The Hungarian film Arbelos is being released by Bellatar, a brand new 4K restoration of that film. Plotting on a payment they're about to receive, residents of a collapsing collective farm see their plans turn to desolation when they discover that Aramius, a former co-worker who they thought had died, is coming back to the village. 2 brand new video essays on that as well, a brand new English subtitle translation too. Cauldron Films is releasing a pair of Italian horror movies. First up, The Crimes of the Black Cat. Now, both of these, Matt, feature slipcase editions. They're limited to only 1,800, and they both include soundtrack CDs as well. Black Cat is about a blind pianist who tries to figure out who's responsible for a string of murders using a black cat with its claws dipped in curare. Curare, is that the poison thing, right? The curare darts. Isn't that what they use in Raiders too? Or is that...
I have no idea. Obviously, it's some kind of poison. I'm not up to date on my deadly poisons.
Well, you better get, likely story. So it's a brand new 4K restoration of the fully uncut version, and a few commentaries, some interviews as well. They're also releasing Beyond Terror. Strange supernatural events plague 3 crooks after they burn an elderly devil worshiper alive in her own house, along with her adolescent grandson. Bad times. Brand new 4K restoration of that one. Includes a CD soundtrack, as we stated, audio commentary, a mini press book reproduction, including writings about the film, double-sided mini lobby card reproductions, and more. The TV movie Buried Alive, featuring Jennifer Jason Leigh and Tim Matheson, is getting released. Clint is an everyday working man whose wife Joanna is having an affair with a doctor. They plot to kill him and get the insurance money. Only trouble, the drug overdose they give him didn't kill him, Matt. Lucky for Clint, he's buried in a cheap wooden box and he unburies himself. Just remember, hell hath no fury like a man buried alive. Code Red is releasing just before dawn. 5 campers arrive in the mountains to examine some property they bought, but are warned by the forest ranger Roy McLean that a huge machete-wielding maniac has been terrorizing the area, as will happen. Scorpion is releasing Rituals from 1977. Hal Holbrook is in this one. It's 5 doctors go on vacation deep in the Canadian wilderness. After all but one pair of their party's shoes disappear, the remaining shoed camper decides to hike out and go look for help. Soon after he leaves, however, Matt, his 4 companions realize that something is very wrong. There's a bunch of VHS slipcover releases of Blu-ray. So I don't know if you've seen these, Matt, but they look basically like you're sliding the VHS out of the cover. That's what the slipcover looks like. And they're going to do that on The Freshman, Crossroads, Father and Son, and of course the Rutger Hauer classic Blind Fury. Your straight to DVD pick of the week, Matt. This may come in handy for you at some point, though I hope not for a very long time. Learn how to contact the dead step by step with Steve Murray. Psychic spiritualist Steve Murray contacts the dead where the unexpected can happen and does. These contacts with the dead give his clients closure so they can beat cancer, depression, etc. Steve then shares his methods and secrets on how he contacts the dead. Plus, Steve shows a method where beginners can contact the dead. He also explains how you can contact the dead, I'm going to say it over and over again so all those phrases become meaningless, through a seance and spirit board or Ouija board. Plus a bonus. Film includes a clairvoyance attunement to help clairvoyance psychic abilities to help beginners contact the dead. Contact the dead. Contact the dead. An attunement is an empowerment with a specific purpose and intent given to a person, usually by a spiritual master. The empowerment of the clairvoyance attunement is to increase your clairvoyance psychic abilities, Matt, so you can contact the dead to contact the dead. What should we be streaming this week?
I'm going to recommend an early 90s gem, The Last of the Mohicans, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, the greatest living actor of our generation. He stars as the titular, he's not the titular Last of the Mohican because he's not a Native American, but it's basically based off of James Fenimore Cooper's from the novel from the 1800s. about the kind of eastern frontier that was in the new American colonies. An interesting period piece. It's got some decent action in it, and to be honest with you, it has a score that slaps, as the kids would say. So I highly recommend checking it out.
I have never seen that film, so yeah.
Really? It's available on Amazon Prime. I forgot that to mention that's where it is.
All right, I'll add it to the list, and eventually maybe never get to it. Matt, little interesting thing about our next film. Did you notice the Midnight Sky, what year it took place?
No, I didn't.
All right, well, we'll talk about that and more right after this.
There is an antenna that's stronger than ours. It's up north. There. Lake Hazen. It's a weather station. It's protected by this mountain range, so the air might still be good. At least for a while. If we get to that antenna, somebody will hear us.
Matt, something horrible has happened. Something went wrong, and now the Earth's atmosphere has become poisoned. People are evacuating to go somewhere where they're going to die. A bunch of people, I guess, are going underground, right? But it's really just going to be a matter of time for them too, it appears. The Earth is going to be desolated, destroyed, unlivable. George Clooney plays Augustin Lofthouse. Augustin? How do I say it? Augustin, right? What? Augustin?
I would have said Augustin. Yeah, I think it's Augustin.
All right.
Although, the fine city in Florida makes me want to say Augustine.
Right?
Yeah.
I'll say Augustine Lofthouse, which for me is an all-timer name. I love that name. He is basically the last guy in this Arctic research facility because he's dying, ostensibly from cancer, I believe.
Yeah, maybe.
And it's up to him to warn this interplanetary craft called the Ether. It's on his way home from its mission to investigate this new moon found off of Jupiter that may actually be able to support life. Mm-hmm. So they're on the way home. They're too far away to communicate with. So he's desperately trying to find a way to tell them, listen, don't come back. Stay where you are.
Right.
And maybe he's not alone, actually, at all, Matt. Maybe there is something else there with him. So we spend time with Clooney and possibly his mystery guest. And then we also spend time with the cast and crew, I should say just the crew of the Ether as well, as they have to deal with their own difficulties on their way back to Earth.
Right.
So this is based on a book, Matt, called Good Morning Midnight. But for me, this is George Clooney's Interstellar. So what are your thoughts on The Midnight Sky? Oh, and I want to say, too, the year was 2049. So is this in the Blade Runner universe?
I don't think so, because everybody's still alive in the Blade Runner universe, right?
Well, maybe this takes place at the end, like 6 months later.
There you go. All right. So, yeah. So Interstellar has its share of problems, but it doesn't. But it's certainly an interesting movie to watch. I think this is a smaller movie, and I don't know if that's by design because I've never read the book, or if that's what Clooney wanted to do, or if it's something of budget. But this is. I think it tries to hit a lot of the same emotional beats. And honestly, this film is being criticized online as being really boring. But for the most part, I would call this deliberately paced. And I'm okay with it for the most part. I'm a big science fiction fan in general, and it can't all be bombast and, the note in Hans Zimmer scores or anything like that. Right. But this does have some flaws in its logic and some of the kind of emotional beats it tries to pull off. But I think ultimately it's relatively successful. I still was intrigued watching this thing, even though I did have some complaints from a filmmaking perspective.
I think one of my biggest issues is just how obvious Everything is in this film.
Mm.
Clooney lays nothing out for you to figure it out on your own. Everything is presented to you just as it's just the whole film is overbearing for me, basically. From his presentation of his visitor at his station, right? At his base, which you immediately know who it is. I knew who it was and what was happening right away. I immediately knew the connection on the spaceship, the ether. There was no other conclusion to draw. It's so ham-fistedly done. And I think that's my biggest problem with this film is its lack of suspense. Right? I enjoyed the fact that the event, what caused all of our problems, is generally ambiguous, and he doesn't bother to solve what that is or explain it. But that's where it stops. Everything else is laid out in front of us with big, gigantic neon signposts of where we're going and what we're going to do next.
Well, he tries to give you a feint at the very beginning with the woman looking for
but that's
a particular
what
person.
Makes it so obvious. That's the feint, even the dodge, even the prestige, Matt, if you will, is obvious because he dovetails it with the other woman's response. So it exists to plant that seed. But as soon as we're introduced to the flashback scenes, again, so painfully obvious because he's in the Arctic, but every time we do the flashbacks, he's now like in some tropical paradise, like every time, right? So we have the juxtaposition of the cold and the never-ending night compared with the bright and sunny, breezy outdoors, everything, all the windows open all the time type of thing, right? It's so obvious. These palette shifts, he hits you over the head with them. And another thing, too, is usually the sure-footed Alexander Desplat's score, another overbearing, plotting thing in this film. Ugh.
I'm not a huge score guy, but even I found it very distracting and was not pleased with it. I thought it was very cliche.
Yeah, and listen, I'll give props to Clooney. The film looks great. The special effects are really well done. Better than Wonder Woman 1984's, unfortunately. I think the set design is really good. All of this stuff looks great, right? It's a technically proficient film, but it's emotionally inert because of all of the just ham-fisted delivery of every component of the film. There's he plays it out like there's all these mysteries that they're going to unravel between our characters as the film progresses, but you're able to figure out what's happening from the first 5 minutes, and it plays out as this thinking person's science fiction film, full of emotion and pondering the secrets of the universe. But none of it ever measures up to that. There's a couple things too that I appreciated. I like the ending, which he bites off of Tony Goldwyn's Michael Clayton. You remember when Clooney's in the back of the cab and the credits roll, and we just stationary on Clooney's face for like 4 or 5 minutes. He does basically the same thing with this film, to a less impact. And also, too, I want a nationwide, global ban on the use of Sweet Caroline in any film going forward.
That has nothing to do with your hate of the Red Sox in general?
No, I've never been a massive fan of the song, even before the Red Sox co-opted it. But here, again, it's just one more obvious Chekhov's spacewalk, as I wrote down in my notes. You know, Chekhov's gun? It's the same thing. As soon as we do the spacewalk and we kick in the Neil Diamond, you know something's going to go wrong. And it's just that whole film plays out like that. Just huge signposts every time we turn a corner, and it undercuts the whole film for me.
Yeah, I'm not as apoplectic about this film as Chris is. I mean, it's not anything special. I didn't find it particularly offensive. I don't think anything is necessarily so bad that it's worth getting yourself all worked up over.
Like I'm jumping around throwing things over here. You're making it sound like
you're pretty animated right now.
Listen, after the movie was over, I put one foot through my television, but that's it.
Well, you know, I guess that is low key for you, I suppose.
There you
go. Yeah. I mean, it's fine. It's not great sci-fi. It's not atrocious sci-fi. Trust me, there's a lot more atrocious sci-fi out there than there is even middling sci-fi. I would say this is a middling dad film. It's fine. I don't think it's earth-shattering in any way. I wouldn't buy this. I'm probably never going to watch it again. Yeah. But you know, if you're looking for some kind of milquetoast, generally inoffensive entertainment, and Obviously there's a lot of things that are not new that are out there that are available for you to see. I wouldn't say it's the worst spent of your time. I would just say temper your expectations. I wouldn't even, I would think even calling it, Clooney's Interstellar is a big disservice to Interstellar. That's for sure.
I would really, I wouldn't watch this. It's not worth your time, I don't think. Outside of the technical proficiency. It looks great, but that's it. I would say watch Interstellar and or Arrival instead. If you want some really thought-provoking cinema, some science fiction that really wraps you up and takes you in, those two films, perhaps even more so if I had to choose one, I'd go Arrival over Interstellar. But there's nothing in this film that has the emotional impact of McConaughey getting the videos from his family like years later, right? Nor does it have the familial connection pop, the punch to the gut that Arrival does at the end of that film as well, right? So watch either, if not both of those, and pass up The Midnight Sky. I'm sorry, George. I'm going to give you still a C- just because the film looks great. And I think Clooney is fine in it, but that's the best I can do. So C- for me, Matt.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little more generous. I'm going to give it a C+. I wasn't upset about it as I was cutting it a lot more slack. That could be just my general affinity for sci-fi, but I'm going to give it a C+. I think it's okay.
Fair enough. If you've seen The Midnight Sky, currently available on Netflix, shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Tell us all about it. All right, Matt, let's spend a few minutes then, close out the show, and talk about our 5 favorite films. And I want to do this going forward. I've kind of slowly transitioned into this without saying anything, but we always did 5 best. And I'm trying to get away from that verbiage and say our 5 favorite, right? Because really, film criticism for the most part is subjective. You can find... Now, I still believe, as I've always said, the arrogance in me is I can enjoy a film that's crap and know the difference, right? And explain it to you, right? Like your Hudson Hawks. That's a piece of shit film, but I absolutely adore it, right? But still, we've transitioned now to favorites. So these are our 5 favorite films directed by an actor.
Young man, ratings went up if the same contestant came back week after week. There was only one way for that to happen. You had to know that.
Young man, I sell over $14 million a year worth of Geritol. Geritol, that's the kind of businessman I am. That show 21 cost me $3.5 million year in, year out. Sales went up 50% when Van Doren was on. 50%. So the very idea that I was unaware of every detail or aspect of that show's operation, well, frankly, it's very insulting.
So you know.
It's even more insulting.
You had to know. That's what you
This
just
is not
said.
about what I know. It's about what you know.
You don't know what I know.
You know that Dan Enright ran a crooked quiz show.
Well, he never informed you.
Did he?
So that is a fun scene from Robert Redford's quiz show featuring Rob Murrow with this ball-peen hammer of a Boston accent. And then, of course, the great Martin Scorsese as the owner of the network, or he runs the whole network thing. I'm talking about the corruption of Quiz Show. I was a big fan of Quiz Show, Matt. I rewatched it about 2 years ago. Still holds up. It's pretty entertaining, kind of dramatic thriller. You a fan of the quiz shows?
I don't think I've ever seen it, actually.
I think it's on Netflix. I think it's definitely worth checking out. It's a true life story about the scandal where basically they were giving the questions in advance to this young, good-looking guy played by Ralph Fiennes over the previous champion who didn't have the visual appeal that they were hoping for to keep the eyes on the tube. Matt, why don't you start us off? What is your 5th favorite film directed by, at least at one point, an actor?
Okay. So my number 5, this is the first thing that immediately leaped to mind when I saw that we were doing this top 5. So I'm going to recommend Booksmart by Olivia Wilde. It's one of my favorite films, I think, from 2019. It's about 2 nerdy best friends in high school who do the nerdy thing and decide that they're going to change who they are. They're going to show people that they're cool, and they're going to go to a party. It's basically I don't even know if I would say less raunchy. It's more of a female-focused Superbad with more updated toward the times. I think it's really funny. I really, really enjoyed it. It's got good emotional beats into it, and the principals are fantastic, although I'm drawing a blank on both of their names right now. But it's worth a watch, and it's a good film from Olivia Wilde.
Yeah, no, that is actually that is a good pick. I had actually blanked on that one, so thanks for bringing that up. Certainly not in my top 5, so I don't know what the hell you're thinking, but still solid. So my number 5 it's a sentimental pick, man. It was one of the defining films of my generation. It Ben Stiller's directorial debut, I believe, as well, and it's 1994's Reality Bites, featuring one of my first major crushes. I think Alyssa Milano was number 1 back in the 80s, back when I figured out what was going on with me and the ladies. And then Winona Ryder, of course. Of course, the story of Ryder, Ethan Hawke, and Ben Stiller. Ryder and Hawke, dear friends who may have feelings for each other. And then Ben Stiller, as MTV producer, comes in, sets up our little love triangle, and things kind of progress from there. Very well done, comedic, very funny at times, drama. Also some fantastic turns by Janine Garofalo. And I believe the film that introduced us to Steve Zahn, America's Sweetheart. A guy who just has there's an everyman kind of quality. I don't know, I love Zahn whenever he pops up and stuff. So he is great. Susie Kurtz is in this as well. But I've always really enjoyed Reality Bites. I have not watched Matt in a very long time, but it really kind of spoke to me and who I was. I was a year out of high school when this film came out, so it had a lot going for itself with me and myself. So Reality Bites is my number 5.
You know what? I have never seen Reality Bites. I've never seen either of the kind of big 2 films. I've never seen Reality Bites, and I've never seen Singles.
I haven't seen Singles because I was very anti-grunge music. And that film was really about, right? It's a romantic kind of drama in that scene at the time, right? In the Seattle grunge scene. So I was like, I'm not watching this crap. One of my, which is funny. So one of my dearest friends from high school, and I love her to death to this day, my friend Tammy, was a huge fan of this film too because she also loved Ethan Hawke. And her now husband loved Singles. And they are now together. And I introduced them, so you're both welcome. But
there you go.
Yeah, it's funny how things all tie together. Well, maybe we'll do that then at some point. We'll have to do some kind of 90s marathon at some point. I wouldn't mind rewatching Reality Bites. It's been a long time.
Yeah. We have to watch some. I think we would have to specify early 90s when that kind of like when gangster rap and grunge and all that stuff is hitting right at that moment. That only lasted like maybe 2-3 years. That's what I'd be interested in doing. But I love Cameron Crowe, so that's kind of like an omission from me. So I don't know. I should have seen it.
There you go.
All right. So coming off the holidays, my number 4 is. I know that there are better ones out there. I know that this is a topic that is thought about. You've got your Wonderful Life people, you've got your Christmas Story people, but there's just something about Will Ferrell and Elf, directed by Jon Favreau, that I can just watch endlessly. I think it is such a fun film, and it's honestly as much as I watch all those other films during the holidays, I come back to Elf. I will watch it like 2 or 3 times, maybe even more. Yeah, just because when it's on, I just start watching it, and it just never seems to get old. It's by far, I think, the funniest and most fun one that is out there right now. It doesn't have the kind of heavy-handedness pieces of It's a Wonderful Life. The humor's more up to date than maybe Christmas Vacation or Christmas Story or Scrooged. So I really enjoy watching it with my family. It's I think my favorite Christmas movie, as weird as it is to say.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know I like Elf, but it doesn't have the same impact on me.
No,
it is weird seeing a blonde Zooey Deschanel in that film too, right? And I don't think she has her bangs in that either, right?
I don't think so. No.
Weird. Anyway, all right, that's fine. But that's the Jon Favreau film you go with, huh?
Yeah, I'm not going with Swingers.
He didn't direct Swingers. Doug Liman directed Swingers.
Oh, okay.
So.
And I thought about Iron Man, but no, I'm saving that for later.
Fair enough. All right, my number 4 then is, I'm going international on y'all. Guillaume Canet's Tell No One. It is an adaptation of the Harlan Coben book, and it is a French thriller, and it is fantastic. I praise this film whenever I possibly can. If you have a chance to see it, watch it. It has one of the best uses of a song that I can think of in the past 20 years. It's a 2006 film. He uses Jeff Buckley's Lilac Wine in this one scene that will devastate you. So Francois Cluzet plays a doctor who's kind of putting his life together after his wife was murdered by a serial killer like 8 years before. And he still misses her terribly. But then one day he maybe gets an email from her. And it's this really roller coaster ride of the film that progresses afterwards, and everything that's happened and what happened exactly. And it is just riveting entertainment. So if you haven't seen Tell No One, I cannot recommend it enough. Granted, it's in French. You'll have to read some subtitles, but it is great. So be sure to check that one out. That's my number 4.
All right. So my number 3 is from a gentleman who has proven himself to be problematic. And there's a lot of directors we could say are problematic. But this is one that I watched many times with my father. My father doesn't even really like movies that much, but he loves this film. It's one I could count on him watching at least once a year. And I've always enjoyed watching it. And it's kind of, kind of throwback sword, medieval battle kind of stuff. And that's Mel Gibson's Braveheart, which he stars in. Won the Academy Award. It is treacly in points. It is horribly violent. It is interesting to kind of see some of the kind of chaos of medieval battles in it. And it's not particularly historical accurate, but it gets the main beats of the William Wallace story correct. I don't know how well it's aged, but I still have a special place in my heart for watching Braveheart. It's a film I still thoroughly enjoy. And if you want to watch, grown men in kilts, filthy kilts, hack each other to death with swords, this is the only place you're going to get that.
Freedom! Yeah, it is. Listen, Braveheart is a great, entertaining film. I'm not going to lie to you. It really is. I haven't seen it in a very long time, but it is good. It was an honorable mention for me, absolutely. But it doesn't measure up, Matt, to my number 3, which is Clint Eastwood's deconstruction of the modern-day Western with Unforgiven. You can choose a lot of film. Clint has directed a lot of great movies, but I think none as good as his basically alternate take of the Western, changing everything. Because really, you watch that film, Gene Hackman is the good guy in that movie. Maybe a little off, a little crazy, but you can see what he's going for here, right? His motivations, basically, can easily be interpreted as the protagonist in that film. But it is really great. Great score, but a deft hand by Eastwood. Really just top shelf stuff. So if you're a fan of Westerns and Clint, seeing him as the aged outlaw killer brought into stuff because his wife has died, he's got to support his family. So he's brought out on the road for one last little mission there to get some money for himself and his buddy Morgan Freeman and his family. Really, great stuff. Unforgiven's my number 3.
I have a feeling I know what Chris's number 1 is going to be. Maybe a recent watch for him. My number...
Not, actually. So now it makes me think I may have forgotten something.
Okay. So my number 2... I'm just going to throw it out there. You know what? As Chris said, this is favorites. These are things that I'm going to watch over and over and over again. And I've been working my way through the MCU on Disney Plus. I'm very close to finishing. Interestingly enough, no Spider-Man films on there. Neither is the Edward Norton Hulk film, I guess, because of their Sony and Universal tie-ins, respectively, which is kind of a bummer. But
none of those films are directed by actors, though.
Well, Thor Ragnarok is by Taika Waititi.
That's true. Kenneth Branagh did one, and then you're right, Taika. Well, okay.
Yeah, I would consider him an actor.
Well, you said Spider-Man though, and I couldn't. I was racking my brain for a Spider-Man film directed by an actor, and I couldn't come up with
it. No. I was just saying that they're not. I was just kind of bummed that they're not available on Disney Plus.
Okay.
So it's not all the MCU films. They're missing
The
Incredible Hulk, and they're missing the 2 Spider-Man films.
I'm saying no major loss in that Hulk film, though. Come on.
No, I know, but for completion's sake, come on.
Yeah.
So my number 2 is arguably one of my favorite Marvel films in Thor Ragnarok. It just has a completely different sensibility. They took the weakest franchise in there, the most boring Avenger, and elevated him into something that I actually cared about. Fantastic turns from Tessa Thompson, and even you got a nice Carl Urban in there, kind of chewing up scenery. But the absolute best part of it is obviously Cate Blanchett's Hela, which is one of the best villains with the most understandable motivations that has ever been on screen for the MCU. So I'm a big fan of it. It's a hell of a lot of fun, and I had to include it.
Yeah, that's bizarre to me because my final 2 films are flat out classics. So you're going to be missing at least one of them. And my mind is blown right now. And never mind the fact, too, that I remember when I pointed out to, because I saw it online, that basically Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok are the exact same film. They have the same motivations, the same thing. It's the same movie, basically, just in different studio kind of setups, different thing. And anyway, I like Ragnarok a lot. I love it. So I'm not going to be too, I'm going to not tear it down too much. But the fact that,
before you say this, I just want to point out, though, this was, again, our favorite films. I can say that there are films that are more important or more artistically merited, but I'm not going to sit down and watch. Like, I'm not going to sit down and watch some of these films that I think you may be getting ready to spout off, like on a regular basis.
I guess. Sure, fine. My number 2 then, which I'm assuming will be your number 1. I would not be shocked if you don't have my number 1 on your list, because a lot of people don't think about it. Oh, they're real too. It's the only film that this actor ever directed, though it's wonderful. But my number 2 then is Rob Reiner's This Is Spinal Tap, the greatest mockumentary of all time. A hilarious film as we trace the tour of this really kind of this heavy metal band that is waning, right? At the end really of their career, they're kind of a spent force. But it is absolutely hilarious. One of the funniest films ever made. And I don't know what else you could say, really. This Is Spinal Tap is an absolute classic. So that's my number 2.
Yeah, it's not on my list because I completely forgot about it. I never really thought of Rob Reiner as it just didn't leap to mind. Yeah, I know, but that was way before my time. I don't think I've ever seen an episode of All in the Family. Although it fits, that's fine. I understand, but I just completely forgot about it. So it would have been on my list if I had remembered it.
Fair enough.
I didn't, so there you go.
Well, that's the one I thought you were going to come up with, so that's interesting. Right, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's a good pick. My number 1 is actually Chris's number 3, which is just a tragedy that it's that low, but is Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, which I think is hands down Stone Cold one of the best Westerns of the late 20th century. I don't think there has been as good a Western since then. I think everything else has been just kind of a shadow of it. And it's kind of like the kind of end cap to an entire genre of films that were basically propelled Hollywood for the first 100 years of its existence. But everything about it is just top shelf. The acting in it, the writing, the one-liners, and just kind of throwing the whole idea of the Western on its head, whereas even the good guys, as Chris said, are killers. And is that somebody you really should be rooting for, kind of thing? So yeah, it's a fantastic film. The Unforgiven is so freaking good.
Absolutely. But it's not as good, Matt, as my number 1. The only film Charles Lawton ever directed, and that is The Night of the Hunter. Robert Mitchum is the, air quotes, preacher who stumbles upon this widow and her 2 children, realizing that maybe there's some cash we can get our hands on. And Mitchum is terrifying in this role from 1955. I remember watching this. I rented it and was blown away by it. I immediately, the next week, went out and bought it on DVD. I still want to upgrade my DVD to the Blu-ray for the Criterion set. But Mitchum is just menace personified in this film. He's got the love and hate tattoos on his fingers. He's stalking the children, it's children. And it's just, absolutely awesome. If you've never seen Night of the Hunter, it is a thrilling little, would you say it's a horror movie? I don't know, but it is some creepy, scary stuff. So that's my number 1.
Yeah, you're right. I wouldn't have thought of that as an actor's film, but it is a fantastic film.
There you go, folks. See, told you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm surprised that Citizen Kane didn't make your list.
I did just see it, and his previous work was really just the War of the Worlds radio show, right? And that's how he got.
He acted in Touch of Evil.
I thought that was after Citizen Kane.
Huh?
That was after Citizen Kane. Touch of Evil.
I know, but I mean, the whole thing was that it was directed by an actor. I would consider Orson Welles an actor.
Yeah, no, that's true. The way I looked at it was that it would have been Citizen Kane, and he acted in that, and it was the first film he did. I don't know. I had this weird thing where I eliminated it because of all of that, which is, I guess, doesn't really make any sense. I did have it as an honorable mention, of course, but it's, yeah.
It wouldn't be a top 5 if you didn't put some kind of weird esoteric rule onto your list.
That's what I do. So do you have any honorable mentions?
Yeah, I had Easy Rider, which was directed by Dennis Hopper. The Virgin Suicides, directed by Sofia Coppola, which is one of my favorite films, but kind of like Chris with his Orson Welles things. I mean, she was really in only one film, and she wasn't much of an actress, so I didn't.
That's why Lost in Translation wouldn't have made my list either. The Godfather 3 turn, I don't know if that really,
if it really counts. Although I would consider Orson Welles an actor. He was in many films, and he was in some fantastic. What was the commercials in the 50s or 60s where he's just drunk off his ass? Like, just.
That's fair.
Yeah. The Cable Guy by Ben Stiller. I know that was not a well-received film back in the 90s, but me and my brother, we actually had a real affection for that film. And just because it's so problematic, but it's really a problem because it is a really good film, is Annie Hall by Woody Allen.
Yeah, no, that's good too. I would include those. And Adrienne Shelley's Waitress with Kerry Russell is fantastic. It is horrible what happened to Adrienne Shelley after that film came out. But I did really think she had a promising career ahead of her, and terrifying. If you can look into what happened, it's just very sad. George Clooney's Good Night and Good Luck. I've always kind of liked those politically conscious, take it to the bully type films. Clooney filmed that in black and white too. Big starring cast there. It's a solid film. What else we got? Kenneth Branagh's adaptation of Hamlet, I was in love with in the late 90s. I watched it a whole bunch of times at that point. Clint's Outlaw Josie Wales I have on here. Gerwig's Lady Bird. And Tom Hanks in That Thing You Do, which is great if you haven't seen that. And then Penny Marshall's League of Their Own. A couple I haven't seen, Matt, I want to check out. I haven't seen Dances with Wolves, Kevin Costner's film. I haven't seen
it either.
Warren Beatty's Reds, and then Brando's One Night Jacks. All supposed to be very good movies that I have never seen.
There you go.
What's your favorite film directed by an actor? Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Next week, Matt, first off, we get a little role play coming, so I got to clean out my rubber suit, get it dry cleaned to really get into it. So that'll be Who Dat. And then we're going to discuss, was it Bacarau, which is currently on the Criterion Channel. I believe it's a Brazilian film. It's supposed to be very good. And then the 40-year-old version, which is currently available on Netflix.
All right.
So you can check that out next week. In the meantime, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. There's search for The First Run. Scroll. Eventually you will find us. We are on all the podcasting platforms. You will find us. But if you want to help out the show, go on to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. It'll help other people find the show, and we'll read it on the air. And I guess that's going to be it, Matt, right? So everybody take care of yourselves. We're going to take an extended break. Hope you had a good New Year, and we'll see you soon.
Your first drummer was
the Peeper.
John Stumpy Pepys.
Oh, yeah.
Great, tall, blonde geek with glasses.
Good drummer.
Great look, good drummer.
Good drummer.
Fine.
What happened to him?
He died. He died in a bizarre gardening accident some years back.
It's really one of those things. It was, the authorities said, best leave it
It's not
unsolved, really.